I look back at a lot of my first gen experience as a gift now, uh, because I've learned how powerful our perspectives on our circumstances are, and how that shapes our internal beliefs about ourselves. Such a trend to separate everything sometimes, because everyone wants the perfect box, but we are creating our new identity again, with those thoughts around that I didn't get to do this, or no one taught me this, no one. Okay, I get that, and that was hard, but what is stopping you now?
Sabrosura pa' ti que.
Hola, welcome to Café con Pam, the bilingual podcast that shares our stories sin censura. El día de hoy, I am joined by Doctora Lisette Sanchez, an award-winning bilingual and bicultural psychologist, speaker, and writer who's dedicated to empowering first-generation professionals, especially Latinas and BIPOC leaders. She is known for her work breaking mental health barriers like the imposter phenomenon and intergenerational trauma while helping folks build confidence from the inside out. Doctora Lisette is the founder of Calathea Wellness and co-founder of First Gen BIPOC Therapist, and her work has been featured in so many places, including LA Times, Refinery 29, Hip Latina, and many more. La doctora Lisette brings deep expertise and corazon to everything she does, and I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. She's lovely. It was super easy to talk to, and we had a lot of fun conversing about, mental health, because I love talking about mental health and I think it's so important. Así que aquí está mi conversación. Disfrútenla y hablamos al ratito. Doctora Lisette, welcome to Café con Pam.
Thank you, Pam. I am so delighted to be here.
So excited to be here, to have you and explore your story and all the things mental health. So, the first question we always ask is, what is your heritage?
Yeah, and I love that you start all of your episodes like this so much, because especially with the Latina identity, with our identidades, there's so much diversity within it. And like, I grew up in Southern California, so I grew up in North Hollywood in the San Fernando Valley. And when I was in school, I had a high school teacher, this older white male, and he would say, I don't care where any of you are from. If any of you are south of the border, you're Mexican to me, right? And so
Oh my
when you,
gosh.
I know, right? This was in the like, well, I graduated high school in 2006, right? So this is the early 2000s. This isn't like for any, like this didn't happen 50 years ago, right? This isn't that long ago, but 20 years, but still, it's not that like you didn't
Yeah,
think.
recent enough.
Recent enough in my memories. And so anyway, I'm still young in my heart, but and that's why when you ask this question, it's extra important, because I remember how in so many spaces our identities, people try to erase them,
Mm-hmm.
and or put us in these different boxes. And so for me, embracing my heritage, because my parents are also from two different countries, and
Mm-hmm.
then I was raised here in the United States. And so, like, what that means is bicultural, multicultural identity. And so, I'm the eldest daughter of hardworking immigrants from Mexico and El Salvador. My father came from a small town in Aguascalientes called Tepesala, but my father's family moved to Tecate when he was a kid. So Tecate is more of the familiarity I have when I go to Mexico, which is honestly such a treat to have my family so close, to live on a border town. For anyone who doesn't know, it's just east of Tijuana.
A hop over.
Just a hop over, for my family, 3-hour drive to get there. And so very easy to visit my family there. And that was intentional, because my grandfather came to work in El Otro Lado, and my grandmother wanted to be closer with her 11 children. And so, big families. And my mom from El Salvador, she grew up in a very rural area that she's like doesn't exist anymore. She said there was a dam that was created and it's all covered up. Yeah, and she's like, I couldn't even tell you, but when people ask you where I'm from, you say San Miguel. So that's what I say.
That's wild.
Yeah.
San Miguel
Yeah,
ya no
she's
existe.
no, not San Miguel. The area that she was from, that she's like, it doesn't.
That's
We
what's
just,
gone.
yeah, that's what's gone. We call it San
Oh.
Miguel because that's the closest. And it was that's how rural my mother's upbringing was. Is what I meant to explain, right? Yeah,
But that's still wild because and thank you for calling that because I've been questioned at times for asking this question because sometimes people have said like why does it matter? But I do think
mhm,
to your point it does matter
yeah,
where we come from and honoring the culture and honoring the history and even
yeah,
to your mom's pueblo or that space
yeah,
where she comes from like the fact that it doesn't exist anymore that's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, yeah. She's like, "We can't go there." And I was like, "What do you mean we can't go there?" And yeah, and so we are able to visit my mom's like aunt, so my grandmother's sister's home. Like that was there. And so last July was my first time as an adult in El Salvador. And because the only time I was there was as a 2-year old. So I don't remember
Right.
anything. But last summer we went and it was such a powerful experience. And so for anyone listening, if you haven't had an opportunity and you can reconnect with your roots in any way, if you're able to travel or whether it's going into the media around it, there's so much access now with our like internet, our libraries, so delve
Mhm.
in. But yeah.
Totally. So how was it for you? Let's go there. How was it for you to one decide? Because I wonder, and of course I don't know all the context, but once your mom tells you like the place where I grew up doesn't exist anymore, I wonder if that even gave you more ganas to go and explore.
See, what's hard is, yeah, I've always wanted to go. See, I've
Mm,
always wanted to go. I've always wanted to connect, but I didn't because of concerns around safety. And these are concerns my mom had, right? That one time we were there when I was one time we were there when I was a kid, all her memories are basically having to stay in one space because, yeah, tú sabes. And so I, because it's feeling more safe now for us to visit. My mom actually went, and it was my mom's first time since that time that I was a kid. So it was me, my mom, her two sisters. This was the first time the three of them had been in El Salvador together in over like 34 years. Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So
That's like a
I was like,
documentary. Did you record
yeah.
it?
I had my own moments. We recorded a few things, but I was just like at the end, I was so curious what this would be like for my mom because she didn't leave. um the circumstances under which she left were like very scary, and so
Claro.
and as a mental health like person in the mental health field, as a psychologist, I was worried for her. I'm like, how is she going to feel? Like,
All the triggers.
yeah, it's like, what's gonna happen? And so I felt like a slightly on edge initially. I was like, how's this gonna be? But I'm also, I was also trying to experience everything for myself and embrace, whatever emotions came, whatever spiritual connection I felt.
Mm,
I, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, passed away in 2016, and so being there last year, there was so much of her that I felt, and there was a
wow.
lot. It was pretty it was really emotional when we landed. I was exhausted. It's humid, but there was this deeply spiritual connection that I felt. And so,
As soon as you landed, I love that.
yeah, as soon as we stepped out of the airport and I'm there and I look around, I'm like, there's this calling, right? Like, it's like
Yeah. Your
my
body
body
knew.
my body knew. I was like, there's home here. This is home too, right? And so I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity, and I, you know, cannot wait to make more trips out and have it no longer be these big gaps between when I get to visit these places.
Totally. And through your work, you mentioned a lot the eldest daughter thing,
Hmm.
I'm an eldest daughter
Yeah,
también.
yeah,
And so as you're talking about this trip and being a mental health professional and working like not only having your lived experience but also being in the field, I'm curious about how did you manage not just your own experience of going back to the land after so long, and also having that eldest daughter responsibility of like taking care of mom, because you kind of like briefly went into it, but let's go into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Oh, I was so nervous about this. I was like, how am I going to feel? I have my own therapist. So, I like talk to my
Did you work on it
therapist about
before?
it. Yeah, I did. Here's the thing, being in the field means that what I advocate the most that I can is prevention, right? If you know that there's going to be a stressful situation coming up, the best we can do is prepare for it.
Yes.
Just prepare for it in the best way you can. And I do that as much as I can. So with my therapist, like I'm feeling a bit nervous, how I'm going to feel, and then thinking about, well, what do I need to help me feel better there. So actually for the first few days of the trip, my spouse, my husband came, and he went on that flight. He only came for he could only go there for the weekend. He's like, I'll go. I'm like, I want you there just for the first few days so that I have someone else to help ground me if I feel,
Totally.
So he came, talked to my therapist about it. And then there was a lot of having to accept and remind myself, like my mom is an adult, and like, we will face things as they happen. But I think um, not because sometimes, with being the eldest daughter and having had these responsibilities to care,
Mm-hmm.
it's parentification, right? You were placed in
Mm-hmm.
the role of an adult, and so then that makes it so that I'm a bit more attuned to some of my mom's needs, right? I'm like, oh, and so needing to recognize that I don't need to be as attuned. I can turn in that attunement inward. Like, what do I need right now first? Like, she's there, her sisters are there,
Right.
like están juntas, like, and my cousin, my eldest male cousin came with us too. So it was this.
De aquí para allá.
Yeah. He came from my madrina, who's the middle daughter. Her eldest son came too. So it was me, and my mom's the eldest sister, right? So,
También.
yeah, we are a generation of eldest, and so
That's fun.
a few generations, yeah, yeah. So you can imagine the dynamics. It's like my mom and her sisters, and so I knew that it's like we're gonna have a few different dynamics going on, but it's gonna be okay. But again, connecting with the resources that I have to help me be okay. And then
Mm.
when I was there, grounding myself in the moments that I needed to. But I didn't need to as much as I thought I would.
So your prevention worked.
Yeah, it worked. My preparing worked. I was like, I know what I need. So when I was there, I focused on being really present in the moments, not letting my mind wander too much about the worries, about the what ifs, because I had processed all of those, right? I'm like, I am prepared for whatever comes up. And it was a lovely trip.
I love that.
Yeah.
So the reason why I wanted to get kind of like dig into this question is because there's a lot of people that are like feeling this calling to go back. And you also talk about generational trauma and how I love how you called the fact that the moment you landed, you felt the air, you felt the land. You were like, this is home. Grandma was here.
Mhm.
She's still here.
Yeah.
It's like casita. And I feel like a lot of people are feeling that call back into the place where we come from. And I mean, in your case, I think that was an intense trip because you took mom and it was like a whole thing. But even when people go by themselves, how do they manage or could they do the prevention work? Because even when they're not taking their parents, your body still knows it.
Yeah.
The generational it's in the trauma's in the body. And so what would you say to the people that are like traveling and they like, while it's really fun to talk about the bliss and the excitement and the joy that you feel and the groundedness, at the same time it's like, oh, this is the place that my people ran away from because at some point it was filled with violence and pain.
Yeah. I think just having that awareness is step one, right? And any of the work that I do, especially with my like individual therapy clients, it's we want to understand like what is actually going to come up for us. What am I anticipating, right? Am I avoiding feeling
Mm.
anything? Like am I
Mm-hmm.
They might tell me, I don't want to think about this. No, well, especially if you're avoiding, giving yourself some time to be clear on what are my expectations, because I wasn't expecting to feel that when I landed. I was curious. I'm like, oh, what is it going to feel like when I'm there? But there was no expectation. So it'd be having self awareness around, like, what are your triggers? Like, what are things that might come up for you?
Mhm.
Are you someone, who, when you're there, you want to be fully disconnected? Like, is your phone a trigger for you? Like, will people be bothering you, messaging you? You're like, I don't have capacity for this, and do not disturb, right? Or turn it off. Um, and so those triggers, you're aware. And if you are avoiding anything, sitting with yourself around that, journaling around it, um, and seeking support. I think these are the basics, right? When I'm thinking of the basics, obviously deeper work is always helpful, like when you can
Mhm.
actually work with a professional. But if you can't, before you go, sit with yourself, journal, and be clear. What are my expectations for this trip? Like, what do I want from this trip? What am I afraid of might happen on this trip? What resources do I have to manage the challenges that might come up for me on this trip? And just be very clear with yourself. And you don't have to sit down, do that all at once. You can do this in pieces, and they could also be conversations with trusted peers.
Mm. That's so good. Listeners, pause, reflect, come back in a second.
Yeah, because I just, in a nutshell, gave you, what the part of the conversations I'm having with my clients and the conversations I had with my therapist. Like, what am I afraid of? How's it gonna be?
Totally. And I'm curious when, like, I have, I'm an eldest daughter from Mexican parents. Both my parents are from Mexico. And so I'm always curious about people that have different countries of
Mhm.
heritage. And so you talk about your trip to El Salvador. Do you feel the same or different when you go to Mexico?
Yes, yes. And I love that you asked this question because, Mexico, again, it's a trip that's more frequent for me, at least to Tecate. We'd go every year for Christmas and often my grandmother's birthday. But I did go to Tepesala, that small town that my dad was from once. That was when I just graduated high school. Again, this is me since I was a kid. I was like, "Can we please go? I want to go." And we ended up taking a trip where, again, these all tend to be family experiences, right? So it's my dad, my mom, my brother, and my grandmother came, and I think a few of my aunts and uncles. I can't. It's been so long now, but I remember us being there. I remember us going to the pueblito where my dad like grew up, visiting my great grandmother who was still alive at the time, mi abuelita
Wow.
Sista, yeah, and just kind of experiencing that, and I remember being like, wow. Now at 18, I didn't have the same awareness that I have now. I was still a kid. I was still, thinking of like, where do I get my candy?
You were
Like, what
Dr.
am I?
Lisette.
Yeah, I was just a girl. I was just a girl, right? And so I wasn't centered as I am now, right? I wasn't actively thinking about that, but I remember being full of wonder.
Mm.
Just like taking it all in, being just like, wow, this is where my dad used to play. This is where he would find those little ants with honey. Like, this is where those things happened, because he would share these stories. And so I think that when I went to El Salvador for the first time, it reminded me of that trip and that experience, because we were all there together. And my dad was also revisiting memories because that was his birthplace that he left.
Total. And it was his first time back?
That was his first time back, but I don't think it hadn't been as long for my dad at that point, right? I'm trying to remember I think if he had traveled in between then, but I just know it hadn't been as long for him by then. And And in terms of family, for the most part, he has a strong connection, is a strong bond, and we see them so much more frequently. Like, I may only go the 1, 2 times a year, but my dad, any chance he gets, he's
Se
like,
la
I'm
pasa
going to
ahí.
Tecate. Yeah, he's like, I'm going to Tecate, and I get it. When I see my dad in Tecate, my dad feels like a boy again, right? He's with his siblings, he's with his mom, and like, and so it's a special joy that I enjoy witnessing.
So it is a little bit different,
Yeah.
the
So
different
yeah,
countries.
it's different. Yeah, there's different countries, different experiences, and I think the El Salvador trip, I had been wanting to do this for all of my life, right? And mom's like, please don't go. We'll go together when I feel like it's safe. And I'm like, okay. So that was different. But when I'm in El Salvador, I mean, and I'm in Mexico, I mean, like, there's still, those are also my roots, right? And so um, I don't want to, but they are different, right? I feel the
Mhm.
connections in both places. But the connection in El Salvador was one that I felt that I had been so thirsty for and like waiting. Where I think my connection with Mexico, I get my tastes every so often. So I'm like, oh, okay, I get this. I want this. But I have been feeling like I want to do a trip to more deeper parts of Mexico and just explore more of that country, right?
¿Por
So
qué no?
yeah, why not?
Sí, yo quería preguntar esto because I often like encounter people, especially now that they have one parent from one place and a parent from the other. And I think it's like even I would say, and I've been quoted on this, that it's not that you're half this, half that, is that you're whole and your part of you is this and part of you is that, but you're a whole
Yeah.
regardless. And
Yeah.
and so I think it's important to honor all the sides of you.
Yes. Yeah. And I do, right? And when people are like, what was it like growing up? I'm like, it just was. It just
Right.
was, right? I didn't know that there were differences. And in my education and as I moved and lived in different places, then I got exposed to even more of the diversity in our Latinidad, even more of the terms and the language that we use for things because I grew up in LA, I went to school in San Diego, then New York, then Oregon, and
Yeah.
like wow. So you meet people who all have such diverse backgrounds, but we have so many underlying values that are very similar. Even when you think of the individualistic cultures of it, right? There's so much that still overlaps, but I don't know. There's such a trend to separate everything sometimes because everyone wants the perfect box, but we are creating our new identities, right? And what that means.
100%. So how did Lisette, before she was Doctora Lisette, how did you even, I've heard you tell the story, but think that you wanted to be a psychologist?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I know everyone always asks me this. I remember, and again, there's like sometimes people will ask this and say, because there's so much stigma in our culture. Like, how did you think that was an option? And then I share that I had an experience with a therapist when I was very young. They're like, how did that happen? How are your parents open to that? And I never asked myself that. But as an adult, I'm like, considering how resistant they are now to any time, I'm like, well, maybe you should try therapy. Like, I think,
Right.
I think I was like, wow, it really did take a lot for them to be willing to accept help for their daughter. So I had very severe separation anxiety when I started school, and so my mom, was like, it just didn't know what to do. She's like, what do I do? And so the teacher suggested that she brings me to a therapist, and I don't remember very much from that experience because I was so young, but I remember learning there are people out there who help
To help
people when they're
people?
going to help people when they have like when they're going through a hard time. Like that's something people can do. They can help. And I think naturally being the eldest daughter, being one of the eldest cousins, unlike my mom's side, being in this role of like a nurturer, caregiver,
You were already the
I was like,
psychologist of the family.
I was like, I'm already doing this, but I also enjoyed it, right? I
Mm.
found, and so because I recognized that I enjoyed it, and then sometime in middle school, my memory is of a teacher asking me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I told her, "I want to be a psychologist." And her answer, I don't know if you heard this part, but her answer was, "I can see you doing that. You have doctor handwriting." And
That's
I was,
funny.
I was like, okay, but here's I think where why I knew I had the psychologist mind before I understood what a psychologist did, because I heard, I can see you doing that. And I was like, and that's enough for me because I don't need to hear the rest, right? I
Mm.
can see you doing that. Cool. Me too. Me too. I can see myself doing that. And yeah, so that dream, that became my dream. And it was one step in front of the other to get to that dream because being first gen, right? My parents, I didn't talk about their education, but my parents, my mom growing up in a very rural area, my dad needing to leave school to help support the family because there was 11 of them. Uh, they only had a to middle school education in their home countries, right? They come here, they value education. They tell me this is what you have to do. This is what helps you. Uh, and so I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. But also, how do I, what do I do?
Right.
What does this look
Y
like?
luego?
Thankfully there were teachers who helped and who cared, right? Again, I think our teachers are also our caregivers. In other words, they're also helpers, they're also healers,
Mhm.
and sometimes they're the first introduction, sometimes they're healing us, or other times they are the ones creating the wounds, like that teacher with the you're all Mexican. Like, dude.
They
um
probably still exist.
oh, I'm sure they do, but yeah, I don't remember his. I could not tell you his name, but I remember that sentence. Yeah, I think because again, my brain's like, we don't need to remember this guy's name, but
Correct.
yeah. So I applied to colleges as a psychology major, and I thought I'm going to be a psychologist when I graduate college. You know,
Didn't know the path.
no idea. Had no idea. At the time, I'm applying to places. I'm going to a library to do this. I'm, filling out all the and just using the computers at school to figure this out. Thankfully, having teachers who would help me, like, what is a FAFSA, And so I'm always very grateful for those who were my initial mentors. My parents are now grateful for them, although at the time they believed I was brainwashed. But
They did? What did they want you to be?
they wanted me to go to college, but their idea of studying was you live at home, you
Of course.
study, you study from home, you go to a local community college, then you get married, and then you move out once you're married, like,
Until you're married.
and you're because a woman by herself, and
¿Cómo
I'm,
crees?
eldest daughter, I'm independent, y'all. You taught me to be independent,
Right.
and
But
so,
not so much.
so not so much. And so, they accepted it and supported it because they didn't stop me from going, but the messages were there, right? You were brainwashed. My grandmother calling me like, your mom is sick, it's your fault for leaving. And I'm like, y'all don't understand. But I had the dream. And so I got to college, got took a class that was seminars for careers in psychology, learned that I did not in fact become a psychologist after
Right
getting
after
a 4-year
college.
degree. I was like, what? That's not, I need to do more school. And then I was like, okay, then it was one step at a time again. And I think, and I keep reiterating that because sometimes the dream can feel so big,
Yeah.
it can feel like insurmountable. But when we break it up into these smaller, like my goal at that point became, okay, I'm going to need a PhD at some point, but most schools require at least a 3.0 to apply. I have a 2.6 GPA.
Oh, can we round it up?
Yeah, I was like, how does this work? But this was first quarter, right? I just, I transitioned. There's a lot that led to that, right? And so
Yes.
and I always share this, I was in remedial writing classes, like I was figuring it out. And yeah, so step one, increase my GPA. That's all I focused on. What do I do to get that up? And then we figured that out. How do I become more competitive? And I found resources. And so one thing about me, my other strength is, although we talk about how asking for help is hard, it's like if I have to apply for the help and if I get it, that's a reward. So that's not help, you know? So
Ooh. Like it doesn't feel like it took like enough work. To earn it?
Yeah, like yeah, like I worked for it and I earned it versus when I just asked for help, did I earn it, right? But I got help through programs like the McNair Scholar. I was a McNair Scholar, and McNair Scholar, for folks who maybe are unfamiliar with that, it is a program that's typically in undergraduate universities, and it is meant to help students who are underrepresented or typically marginalized have access to resources to apply to graduate school. And graduate school can be master's or doctoral programs. And when you are accepted, they provide you with a mentor and financial resources. And most of the time, you are able to waive your application fees.
Nice.
Yeah. So
It's huge
I
help.
was like, yeah, I was like, help, but it's an award. So,
Mm.
like, again, the way that my
She was
brain
like,
processes.
wasn't hard enough.
Yeah. So hard. So yeah, so got that. And then that helped me understand, like, okay, this is the applications, this is what that looks like, how to help you be more prepared. So I'm always very grateful for the McNair program. And there are many other ones like that. I think Mark is another one, but if anyone's a college student listening to this, like, look into your university resources, figure out what they have available to you, because
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes they're not as promoted, right? Or, when you're first gen, you just
You
don't
just don't
know. You
know.
don't know. You
Correct.
just don't know.
Correct.
Yeah, did that applied, and
Just
did.
made it happen. Something similar happened to me. Very similar. Because I also first gen, eldest daughter, all the things. And I wanted to be an architect. So I finished high school in Mexico City. And la educación en México es muy diferente. So I graduated high school with like what I guess it's considered here like AP classes. I don't know. But I did calculus, trigonometry, physics, chemistry because that's
Mhm.
the path to go into architecture school. And in my head, because this is when you don't know what you don't know, any university, because in Mexico la mayoría de las universidades, like at least public universities, todas tienen la facultad de arquitectura. And so I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go to a university here, go to architecture school, like whatever. And lo and behold, like little did I know, I was in my, I think it was sophomore is when you declare your major, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Usually by then.
Yeah. So the counselor was like, hey, you need to declare your major. And I was like, well, I'm going through the list and I don't see architecture. And he was like, no, you have to go, you have to transfer to a bigger university, like, and then the nearest, because I went to college in Missouri, the closest one is KU, like the University of Kansas. And those like in Lawrence, Kansas, those like, I don't know, 2 hours away. And I was like, I already moved to come here. Like, what is happening? And I went into like a deep depression, didn't know what I didn't know. And it's like a real thing that a
Yeah,
lot of us navigate. And so I ended up
yeah,
going, I stayed in the art department. So I became an art kid. I was a theater kid. I became an art kid because I was like, what's the closest thing to art? Like, I don't want to, like, I've already had to solve so many problems in my life, including coming here and figure this out. I don't have to solve another move and another, like, what? And it's so much more expensive. Like, it was a lot. And so I ended up not becoming an architect, obviously. I stayed in the art department and it was a lot of fun. But that was like one of those things that I think about how different would my life have been if the resources had been there. And I almost switched to psychology, fun fact. I was like super
oh,
close. Hmm.
Doctora Pam.
Maybe one day. I refuse.
Yeah.
Academia. Yeah, I have a thing with academia. It's like, we can talk about it.
Hey, we got through it. We had the dream. I got through it, had the dream, but it was, would not do that again.
I know.
Like, I did
I
it
hear that
once.
often.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I am so I admire the people who stay, especially any person with a marginalized identity who stay and work in academia, especially tenure track. Because for me, I looked at it, I was like, that's just an extension of grad school, and grad school was torturous and traumatic, and I'm trying. This was a means to an end for me. I need to go
Right.
somewhere else.
Totally.
But anyway, you do what you figure out what you need to for whatever makes sense for you at that time. In your instance, you're like, I'm recognizing my internal resources are maxed out,
Yep.
maxed out. So how do I make what I have available to me work for me? And you
Mm-hmm.
did,
And we graduated.
and you graduated, and you're doing amazing.
And
So
here we are asking questions for a living.
yeah.
Um, well, let's take a quick coffee break.
Sabrosura pa' tu que que.
Doctora Lisette, do you drink coffee?
I don't drink coffee. I am
Mm.
really, I know. I love how it smells. I love the taste, but when I have coffee, I have to have decaf because I'm very sensitive to caffeine. So
Oh, you get like,
yeah,
you start bouncing off the walls?
I get what everyone tells me they love about drinking coffee, but I get it like at such an intense dose that I'm like, I decaf. Literally, I feel probably what you feel, what most people feel with a regular cup of coffee with a decaf, because decaf has such
Wow.
a small amount of caffeine. Or if I get like a regular coffee, I'm like, give me the small one, and then I will share it with someone, unless I'm like ready to like dance it out or something.
Right.
But otherwise, if I'm sitting there, I've learned. But my belief is like, maybe that's just for now, but maybe at some point I'm gonna need it, right? But I got through grad
Maybe.
school,
I was gonna say, if you got through grad school without it, then I think you're good.
but I love the smell, the flavor, and the experience of it. But yeah, when I go, I will order decaf, and not everywhere will have decaf. And like, I get the looks, and I'm like, I get it, I trust me.
Especially the
I get it.
purists. Like if you go to like
Yeah,
a specialty coffee shop, they're probably like, "Oh, how
yeah,
offensive asking for
I know.
decaf."
I know. I was like, I know. All right, give me a hot chocolate then. And I
Right.
was like,
So what's your beverage of choice?
so if I go somewhere, if they have decaf, then I will get decaf, and I love like lavender oat milk decaf latte. Or and I know I'm always like, if I really want just like a hot drink, I do love tea. Recently, I had someone who made me a chamomile like latte. She called it, but it was like a chamomile
With
like
foam
tea,
milk?
like
With
with, yeah,
steamed
oh, with
milk?
oat milk. Yeah, with oat milk and chamomile, and it was really yummy. And like, I felt very relaxed after. And I was like, okay, I
Nice.
had never had that, and we'll have it again. So
Chamomile lavender, that combo is like
yeah.
very yummy too. If you like the lavender latte, I mean
Ooh,
the chamomile latte, maybe
yeah.
like you could combine lavender with chamomile and then you'll be passed out in
Ooh.
no time.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, that's an
So
evening drink.
definitely an evening drink, but yeah, so normally that's decaf, or like teas that they'll have on the menu. I love, and but I love, if anyone ever has the like Mexican hot chocolate, and
Mm.
that's what I'm gonna get. And so
Do you have a morning ritual that you like where you prep a bevy or you just
no, I just water. I normally have water in the mornings to help me get up.
That's very practical.
Recently.
I admire people that do that.
Yeah, no, I hydration is so important to me. But no, I laugh because recently, as I got older, I was like, oh, I need to start having more fiber in my diet. So recently, it's like water with the Metamucil, and I'm just like, just this is good for you. So,
Nice. I understand.
but yeah, the healthy one. But yeah, it's my water. This is what makes me happy.
I love
So
that. I I'm very much like the other day I threaded that is that what we call it now? I don't know. That I my emotional support drinks need a whole desk because I have water, I have water with electrolytes, I have tea, I have cacao, I have coffee, and sometimes they just kind of like accumulate and it's a whole thing. But what I'm drinking today, so I have been called a lot to cacao, and
mm,
I've been learning a lot about it. It's been a really powerful plant that's been calling me for a long time, and I'm finally listening. And I have been playing a lot with it. It's really fun. So I don't know if you've had, because you talk about Mexican chocolate, but cacao is kind of like before it becomes
Hmm.
chocolate. So it's like a much more less processed cacao bean. And I'm not gonna like, I can talk about cacao for like days, but what I'm drinking is a, I realized that I have, they call them stinging nettles. So it looks like a root. It looks like a weed. So I realized that like since we had a lot of rain in California, I'm in San Diego, like it just they went wild. They started growing. And so one of my cacao teachers actually, she was like, we have a lot of stinging nettles growing. So if you find them in your yard, like those are great to like forage. And then I looked into them more, and I do indeed have stinging nettles. And back in Egypt, way back when, the reason why they're called stinging nettles is because if you touch them, they sting you, and you get
Oh,
like a little, like kind of like an allergic reaction. But back in the day, Egyptians used to use them as like they would sting you to support with arthritis pain. Wild,
wow.
right? And
Yeah.
so I have these like a ton of stinging nettles growing in my yard, and I like a good señora, I go and I like forage them. And what I have been doing, all that's to say, is what I'm drinking is I brew the water. I make like stinging nettle tea
Hmm.
with fenugreek. With this time I added arnica, like the planta. I forgot to add moringa, but next time. And raspberry seeds and the nettles, and then I add cacao, and I make this whole concoction, and it's delicious. And then to my cacao, I've added. I feel like the listeners, when they listen to me like mention my drinks, they're like, "WTF? What? Like, oh my gosh!" But I promise they're delicious. And I add, ¿cómo se dice? Almonds, like smashed
Ah,
almonds to give it like a crunch
yeah.
because I ran out of cacao nibs. And I mean, I think like maybe it's a neurodiverse thing. Like my ADHD just like requires a lot of things, but it's so fun.
As I was listening to you, I'm like, it's a lot, but it also like this is such a any routine that we have to prepare for like that, like you savor it so much
So
more, right?
much.
You savor you're like, I pick this from my
From the
yard,
earth.
I clean it, I got this is mine. And so it's like, and so I love that. And then we talk about the stinging nettle, is that,
Nettle,
am I
uh
saying that correct? Nettle. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, she used to get bees and sting herself
huh.
for
That's a whole
arthritic pain.
therapy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
She
she
did it
would
before
say,
it became a thing, probably.
yeah, yeah, she would do that because I find I was like, why are there a bunch of bees in a bag here? She would like save them. I was like, and yeah, bee stings are so painful.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, oh my god, but yeah. So that's what that brought back that memory of thinking about that. I'm like, oh, you're right. She, that.
I mean, and
And,
I love your plantas in the back, like, you know,
yes, my
like
plantitas. You can see some of them. Oh,
plantitas
that
are
one was
so
struggling.
good. They're so good for us. I often think about my chemistry teacher.
Hmm.
She was like, you talk about teachers. I agree 100%. Like teachers are like such great caregivers. So she was one of my favorite teachers, and she taught us that everything we feel is chemistry. And, when you're like 17, you're like, ugh. But we made cheese, we made perfumes, we made candles, we made like so many things in the lab because everything we feel is chemistry. And she was like, even the things that like you feel the air, that's chemistry. You feel your body, that's chemistry. And so like I fell in love with chemistry. For a minute, I was like, oh, I'm gonna become a chemist. And then like I started doing formulas, and I'm like, yeah, my brain just cannot. We'll stick to admiring chemistry. And during that class, she also told us how all the medicine, like ibuprofen, aspirin, all the things, come from plants. And so, like, I often bring myself back to how could I touch the plant before I go to the medicine cabinet? How could I find the plant first before I go to the medicine cabinet? And so the stinging nettle thing, it's a great anti-inflammatory,
Yes. Well, yeah.
you know? And so I'm like,
That makes sense. Arthritis,
correct,
anti-inflammatory,
correct.
arnica,
Arnica.
anti-inflammatory. This
I
is a
know.
very anti-inflammatory cocktail you've made.
Very well, because I think, well, I'm also my period, so I'm like, how do I help my womb? Like, just,
Yeah.
and it helps
The
so
raspberry.
much. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
wild. So I often think about my chemistry teacher when I'm like making my concoctions, and I'm like, see, I didn't do like all the compounds, but I'm doing it with plants. Why not?
I that sounds like such an amazing teacher. Like I hope that she inspired other people to do what she does because honestly it makes such a big difference. Like you're
Such a
like
big
maybe not the
difference.
formulas, but you understand so much of your interactions with the world, with the
Yeah,
things that you have, you put what you put in your body because someone actually taught you the real life application,
exactly.
not just the H2O, whatever. Is that physics? I don't
That's chemistry. That you're right.
That
You're
sounds
right. That is chemistry. The
okay.
compounds. Yes.
The compounds, the
All right.
compounds.
Super long coffee break, but let's get back to the show and back to your story. Let's talk about something we all deserve: financial empowerment. Whether you're tackling debt, planning for retirement, or starting that dream business, navigating your finances can feel overwhelming. But it doesn't have to be, thanks to Savvy Ladies. Savvy Ladies is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping women like you take control of your financial future. They offer free resources, webinars, and my favorite, a free financial helpline where you can connect one on one with trusted financial experts. And yes, it's completely free. Whether you're just starting your financial journey or need guidance on a specific challenge, Savvy Ladies is here to provide quality and trusted advice you can count on. So why wait? Visit savvyladies.org today and connect with the financial helpline to get the personalized support you deserve. Your journey to financial independence starts here. That is savvyladies.org. Your path to financial freedom can start today. Dr. Lisette, okay, so we're running out of time. I feel like at some point, Café con Pam is going to be, we're going to be at a studio and we're going to like go for hours, like the big podcast, because there's just so much to talk about. But in this case, we have like 10, 15 minutes left. So, how did you decide? You went through the whole process of you survived academia.
I did.
Yay. So, how did you decide that you were going to focus on first gens?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so part of the dream was always wanting to help my comunidad. And initially it was like my Latina comunidad, right? And so I had that experience. I worked in community mental health. And through those experiences, I enjoyed that. But then I had an experience at university counseling centers where I worked with more first gen college students. And
Mm.
I had those sessions, and I saw myself in every single one of those kids I heard or students. I saw myself in every one of those students. They're adults.
Young adults.
I young adults, and I but also when I heard their stories, I would be sitting there in sessions with them and hearing the same stories that were my life, all those years before. And then I had this like realization of like, okay, first gen college students, we're still experiencing the same patterns. Like this is a population, us as first gens, are not getting enough resources to focus on our mental health. If I'm hearing the same thing that happened to me when I started undergrad, right? And I went to school for 13 years. Like
Yeah.
I was like, I've gone to school for 13 years and I feel like I'm back to my first day in college when I work with these students. And so, working with them but working within the system, I was finding I was experiencing more burnout because the reality is first gen Latina psychologists. There's only so many of us. There's only so many Latina psychologists. There's so many first gen psychologists. And so when you're in a system, they're going to max you out, right? Because, and, and I want to see the students, I want to help them, but
You're
I
also one person.
needed, I'm one, I'm
Yeah.
one. And so I took the risk into entrepreneurship. And when I was taking that risk, everyone's like, well, what are you going to specialize in? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm also terrified of not making any money. Because remember, I went to school and now I'm graduating with some student loans. I don't have any savings. I don't have any inheritance. I have no safety net.
There's no trust fund here.
There's not, and which is the experience for many first years. I was like, there's nothing, and I'm going from school, so I'm not even going from like a corporate job where I had some things. I'm not going
Right.
from school, and when you start as a psychologist before you're licensed, like you're getting paid very little, right?
Mhm.
As a postdoc, I think they paid me $30,000 a year in California. Yeah, yeah, I'm not joking. It's like it's very very little. 30,
How do
34,000
they
maybe.
expect you to survive? That doesn't even cover rent.
Yeah, yeah. I had to get very creative. I got very lucky, but it was,
A lot.
resourcefulness. It was a lot. It's like I'm grateful that I don't have to experience it that way, right? But then after, I made the leap, and I was like, I want to focus on first gen professionals, because what I'm seeing in first gen college students, it's like, then if you're now and you have some resources, what is it like for the professionals who have no real resources? There's nothing. There's nothing
Mm.
really out there. You can find a handful of videos, you can find some programs or initiatives that were started, and then funding fell through, and then something happened. And so I was like, this is who I want to work with. Now, people around me said, that's a bad idea. That's not a good population to focus on. You're not going to make any money working with first gens.
Mm.
And those voices again,
Yes.
like, well, this is what I want to do though. And if I'm betting on myself, then I want to bet on my community in the same way that to follow the dream from what it was. I want to help my comunidad.
Mm.
And then I realized my comunidad, it's first gens, right? It's the first gens, the first in their families to trailblaze, to experience, whether it's college or a professional career, entrepreneurship, because as the first, we live in so many in betweens, and those in betweens cause us so much distress, anxiety, depression, the different emotions that you've shared, I've shared. But in my work, I've realized that in between, these are bridges that we are building, right? They're not gaps. They are these beautiful bridges that are helping us create, like I said, new identities, new communities, and create larger systemic changes. But as long as we view those gaps as challenges and barriers, we don't recognize the bridges that we are, and the larger changes that we can create because of our bicultural or multicultural identity, not despite it. Yeah.
No, I think it's really powerful, and I think I've also heard you say precisely like, on that same note of the bridges, how when you talk about translating, it was instead of being like, "Oh, I had to translate for my parents," it was a gift that you were given. Tell us more about it. I when I heard you say
Yeah.
that, I'm like, "Oh, that's such a beautiful way to put it."
Yeah, because I get to do that, right? I get to be the first person in all of my ancestors waited so long for the opportunities that I finally had access to. And yes, in that moment as a kid, it was a challenge. It was frustrating. I was like, why do I have to do this? But as an adult, when I look back, I do think of it as a gift, because I got to be that bridge. Like I get to help connect, right? And my dream has been to be a helper, to be a healer, and I got to do that, and I got to play that role for my family, but for my ancestors, right? It's not just navigating something new by myself, which is, I get it, it feels very isolating, but it took a lot of decisions that a lot of people before me made to get to this point, and it was not easy for them. the paths are never easy. But yeah, I look back at a lot of my first gen experience as a gift now, uh, because I've learned how powerful our perspectives on our circumstances are, and how that shapes our internal beliefs about ourselves. And when you look back at an experience, and I don't mean to say this to dismiss or minimize any trauma that someone has. So I want to make sure we make that distinction. But when we can look back at an experience that was challenging, okay, hard, separate from traumatic, if you look back at something that's hard and we think about it, what are the beliefs that were shaped around that difficult experience for you? And when the beliefs are, I had to do this, I didn't get a choice to do this, like everything was taken from me, right? Like then you go and you enter the rest of the world in that protective mindset, right? Everyone is out to get me constantly, right? And I look back and I thought, I got to do this for my family. My family turned to me, they because there were no other resources, okay? There were no other resources. And they weren't forcing me to do this. This was a survive something we needed to survive, right? And I got and I as a child had the resources and the skills to help our family survive, right? And and again, it was challenging, it was hard, but it was a gift.
I love that. And I think what you just shared will help, hopefully, ground a lot of people in that truth that many times I see the pain of people dragging that of like, oh, this was so hard and I didn't have a childhood and I had to grow up really fast and all the things. But that reframe of, well, and it was a gift because I could. And what an honor.
What an honor. And let me tell you, Pam, my spouse makes fun of me all the time because like I'll do the inner child healing is real because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who says that because I didn't get to do these things then, that I don't get to do this now?
Yes.
Like, oh, I didn't get to the okay. So what's stopping me from doing it now? You
Yes.
know? And so if I'm at a park and I see an empty swing and I want to sit on that swing because I want to have a moment where I want to feel myself in the air, I'm going to sit on the swing. Like I and so again with those thoughts around that I didn't get to do this or no one taught me this, no one okay, I get that and that was hard, but what is stopping you now from
Yes.
accessing these things, right?
Totally.
What is and so, I watch cartoons, all right? I will watch
I
my
love
Disney
watching cartoons too.
yeah. So they like if you walk in on me watching Moana like by myself, I am happy. Okay? I am happy. So,
Indeed. I'm there with you. Yeah, I love inner Niña work and like calling that inner Niña back to see what she needs. And in my case, is a she, her. So powerful. Ugh, I have so many more questions. Tell us more about first Gen Sin Barreras, all the things.
yes. Yes. So, like I talk about, we view a lot of these experiences as challenges. And like many first gens, I know you've had yourself probably experienced this, and many other folks, I've listened to some of your past episodes. They share when I see something that I want and it's not there, then I'm just going to create it. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to do something about this because I'm tired of waiting for someone else
That's
to
a
do
very
this.
eldest
Like,
daughter thing to do.
right? Yeah, exactly. I was like, I was like, I'm not alone in this. So, so in this actually last December, I was sitting there because I'm like, I want to do something. What can I do? What works? And I sat there. I'm like, because we need to stop seeing these. I'm having these conversations in my individual therapy sessions. I'm having these conversations every time I do a speaking engagement. I am writing about these things. How can I enhance this impact to reach more people? Like, what do I do about it? And initially, my thought was like, what do I call this? Because I have to start with a name to feel inspired. Reach out to
Yes.
my community because I think like I don't know what I was thinking of calling it, but it was not first gen sin barreras because I was like, oh, I don't know the bilingual, like how do I do this? And then, but reaching out to my community, they're like, no, we like this first gen sin barreras, which is a fun play on if for those who grew up with hearing English sin barreras. Uh, and, because as first gens, we see so many of these things as barriers, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just because we don't have the tools to navigate them. And we just, whether it's thinking about it differently, understanding what exactly it is. And so I created, it's a short guide with reflection questions, but it's in Spanglish, right? The reflection question will be there, but it's a reflection. I thought of like loteria cards and how they'll
Yes.
be like, la dama, and I was like, well, la confianza. Let's reflect on
Yes.
that. So there's these journaling prompts, and so the way that my vision for it, because again, it's just my baby right now. It's like in infancy stages as it's developing, is it's a guide resource for first gens to access for free. Just go to my website and you sign up for my newsletter. You get this free guide, and I'm releasing 4 this year. And each guide will be focused on common challenges that first gen experience, common barreras, because we're reclaiming these. We're going to be first gens sin barreras, right? But to do that, you have to do the
We
work.
have
You
to
have to
face the
reflect.
barreras.
You got to face the barreras. And so I started with the one that I talk about the most often, which is the imposter phenomenon.
That's a whole episode.
It is. That's a whole episode. So I'm not going to get into that. But the first one's imposter phenomenon. And this May, I'm releasing the second one, which is going to be on first gen guilt. So
Ooh, fun.
yeah. So my goal is just for people to access this, to reflect on it, and to share it with others, whether it's privately or publicly. And at some point, I would love, like, my dream. I think I visualize this like being able to tour in different spaces to have these conversations with folks, like large stage, small groups, whatever it might be, where we are challenging our perception of these barriers,
Yes.
and and so that we stop. And whether I'm facilitating or someone else is, I just want people to have these conversations, and I get out of that mindset that was formed when we were very young, right? That, oh, I didn't get this. That's okay. Let's get
Mm-hmm.
it now.
Yeah, because you can. You get to
You
now.
can. You get to now. Yeah.
Tell us all the places and spaces where we can find you.
Okay. You can find me on my website. It's calithiawellness.com. Calathea, and very quickly, is a plant species that represents new beginnings.
Mm?
It symbolizes, like, yeah, so for me, it symbolizes first gens because we're a new beginning for our families, right? So Calathea Wellness, you can find me on Instagram. I like showing up on Instagram, and I'm the first gen psychologist on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. I love being on Threads. I do enjoy your Threads, Pam. I'm always like, hey, Pam.
My threads are like a whole brain dump.
Yeah, I go through my waves of like, I'm here or I'm not here. And so, yeah, you can find me mostly on those spaces. And then on all of those, I have a link where you can access of some of my other, like my writing or some of the other interviews that I've done. And yeah, so those would be, find me there first.
Amazing. Well, Dr. Lisette, thank you so much for your work, for all that you do for us, and definitely listeners go download the guide because once you get the first one, then you get the rest, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, I think it's a great resource, and I love that mental health is it's a conversation that we are having now. When I started Café con Pam in 2016, I was shamed a lot for talking about mental health because I was literally told by people, "Ponte a limpiar." Like, what do you mean mental health? We don't deal with that. We just
Yeah.
we don't go to therapy.
Hmm.
And so I love talking to mental health professionals that are doing the work and talking about all the things because our comunidad necesita hablar más.
We do. And sometimes, we feel like broken records saying this, but y'all, like, our emotions are not bad. And
Mm-hmm.
but they are uncomfortable, and we have to learn how to sit with that discomfort and move through it.
Especially when we've been taught not to feel them.
Yeah. 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 So feel the emotions. They're okay. You're okay.
Yes, totally. Okay, last 3 questions.
Okay.
What's the remedio you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. So I think that's when you were sharing your tea, what you put in it. But arnica has been something that I will use, like whether in tea form or in a pomade form, right? Like if I'm having any physical discomforts, I will put an arnica pomade on. If I'm feeling just like extra bloated or just pain, I will drink an arnica tea. And so that's what I would recommend. And they sell arnica teas.
Everywhere.
But if you have the plant, just
Just
yes.
pour some hot water and drink it. It's not. Add some honey.
Yes, yes, add some honey. Add some honey, yes.
What's your quote or mantra that you live by?
Okay. So my favorite quote is, "It's not what I say out loud that determines my life. It's what I whisper to myself that has the most power."
It's so good.
No, I love it so much. And, people will sometimes ask, "Oh, what if I'm whispering anxious thoughts to myself?" I'm like, well, that's the point.
Right.
Recognize, like, what are you saying to yourself? How are you talking to yourself? And check out the first Gen Sin Barreras prompts if you need somewhere to start.
Right. Awareness.
Yeah, yeah.
And the last question is, what's your productivity tip, trick, or tool?
Yeah, D and D. When we talk about my best productivity method is just putting my phone on do not disturb, because I am so easily distractible. And I'm,
Tell me
I
about it.
yeah, currently working through therapy and that to figure out whether I have ADHD or where I am in terms of neurodiversity. But I'm so easily distracted. And I've learned that if I have my phone on do not disturb, at the bare minimum, I won't have the external, like, or that extra distraction from that, right? So
Yes.
setting that up. And then, so step one, do not disturb at any point, even if I'm cooking dinner. It's like
Right.
just another step. I just want to cook my dinner in peace right now. What do you need to recharge? And then the breaking up my day into 4 quarters technically is a productivity hack. I use it for stress management, but a productivity hack for in the way that you're thinking about your day, like in the morning, like what am I doing in the first 4 hours of my day, my next 4 hours, my next 4 hours, my next 4 hours, and blocking that off can be really helpful. I think about it for my daily stress management. If I have a particularly stressful morning, sometimes for a lot of people that can feel like it bleeds into the rest of the day.
Mhm.
The rest of your day feels hard. Well, it's thinking, well, my first quarter was tough, but I can recover in second quarter. And I'm not even like, I don't watch a lot of sports, but I do love watching the big games. And we can come back at any quarter,
That's
y'all. We can
right.
make it so come back at any quarter. And so I remind myself of like Q1, it's okay. Or if I had like, like a really long day, maybe Q4, I'm like, I'm just gonna relax this last 4 hours of my day. This day just I need a bit more rest, right? So kind of navigating it like that.
I love that. It makes me think of my one of my mindfulness teachers who would be like similar to your quote actually, because she would be like, I when people say I woke up with the wrong foot or whatever the saying is, she's like, you have to remind yourself that every minute is a new opportunity. And
Hmm.
so I love how like you kind of like bucketize the day and say,
Yes.
okay, whatever happened in the first 4 hours, we have a new opportunity in the next 4 hours. How are you gonna make the best of it?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's whatever, however you need to break it up or bucketize it, right? If it needs to be by minute because it's that kind of day, we do it by
Right.
minute. If by hour, we do it by hour. And some people have it's like, where's your capacity, right? What can you
Yes.
offer? But I find quarterly in a day, especially on the hard days, is very helpful, because I'm like, all right, let's reset. We're
Mm-hmm.
on Q2,
Mm-hmm.
halftime,
Let's
whatever.
go.
Yeah,
I
let's
love
go.
that.
Yeah.
Bueno, doctora Lisette, thank you so much for coming to Café con Pam, sharing a little bit of your story. Maybe we can bring you back and keep talking about the imposter phenomenon and all the things.
Yeah.
Like, anytime you release a new First Gen Sin Barreras workbook, come back
Oh,
and promote it.
okay.
We can do
Yeah.
that. We can do
Four of
that.
them.
Four of them, yeah, for sure. How fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
I'd
thank you
love
so
that.
much for all your work and all you do.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you for cultivating such a beautiful community through your podcast, through your everything. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bueno, if you enjoyed the conversation, I would love to hear about it. If this podcast has ever inspired you, you can also support us in so many ways. Of course, the easy and free ones: subscribe, rate, and review. If you are watching us on YouTube, you can, of course, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, share with someone you love. Who is this conversation going to be useful for? I'm sure you can think of at least 3 people. We would love it if you share it with others because it helps a ton when you actually help us share. It allows stories like this one to be spread out to many more people so that our stories are heard from our perspective. Other ways: stay connected. Social media at Café con Pan Podcast on all the places and spaces. If you are, wanting to be even more helpful, you can join the supporters club for $5 a month. You can check out cafecompam.com and see how we can continue to work together. Y bueno, gracias por estar aquí. Nos vemos la próxima semana. Como siempre, stay shining.
Sabrosura pa' ti que